Okay, everyone, welcome to the October 25th, 2023 webinar hosted by the Nevada Board of Professional Engineers and Land Surveyors. By attending today's webinar, licensees will fulfill the PDH requirement for 1 hour to review Nevada NRS and NAC Chapter 625. So thank you all for attending. Bear with me as I'm multitasking, clicking, admitting people in and so forth. But my name is Derek. This is I think it's the third or fourth webinar that we've put on for this particular PDH requirement. We're limited to the first 500 attendees. Right now, it looks like we're not going to hit that mark yet. So everyone that's wanting to get in should be able to get in. If you are not able to get in, or if you have to leave for any reason, you can watch this webinar on the YouTube video, and I'll tell you where to get that later on in the presentation. Like I've said in the chat already, I'm keeping everyone's mic muted. If you have questions throughout the presentation, try to use the chat message. I'll do my best. We'll get to the end, and if we have a little bit of time, we'll answer some of those questions live. If we don't get to your question, I'll take the chat transcript and I'll try to answer your question. You can email me as well, and I'll give you instructions on how to do that as well. But use the chat function for questions for now. I'm going to also give you instructions on how to document your participation. This is a common question that I get every time we do one of these. On how to do that. I'll explain that later. There'll be a certificate that you can print out or save. I'll explain that as we get towards the end of the presentation. Let's get it started. I'm going to introduce Patty Mamola, our presenter. Patty is a licensed civil engineer and the executive director of the Nevada Board of Professional Engineers and Land Surveyors. In addition to the day-to-day operations of the board, her duties include working with the board and the legislature to maintain and update the statutes and regulations that govern the practice of engineering and land surveying in Nevada, which is what today's presentation is all about. Patty, take it away.
Thank you, Derek. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. I hope you find this interesting and you at least are able to take away one little nugget, if nothing else, if not a few nuggets. So I want to start off because I think it's important. In Nevada, probably 2/3 of our licensees are non-resident. They're from outside of Nevada. And I think it's important to understand Nevada's laws, rules, regulations. So in Nevada, you are regulated by Nevada Revised Statutes, Chapter 625, that's NRS 625. Those are the statutes, okay? And you're also regulated by NAC, which is Nevada Administrative Code, Chapter 625, which are our regulations. And it's important to understand that so that you can find those and read them and understand them. Hold on, let me make sure my computer's working here.
Uh-oh, did it freeze?
Yeah, my computer froze, so 1 minute here. Okay, I see down there, okay. So anyways, that's a picture of our Nevada law book that we have printed versions on. You can actually go onto our website and you can fill out a form and we will mail you free of charge a book that has the Nevada Revised Statutes, Chapter 625 and Nevada Administrative Code 625. And there's a couple other chapters, NRS chapters in there. It's 329 and 327. That's related to land surveying issues, which we also have purview over. But it's important to remember you are regulated by NRS Chapter 65 and NAC Chapter 625. And during today's presentation, I'm going to highlight some of the statutes and the regulations that are important for you to remember and where people commonly get in trouble. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those cases where people have gotten in trouble. And we see a few violations related to those statutes and regulations every year. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is NAC 625.220. Now that's a regulation. And what that says is that we in Nevada license you by discipline. That's by civil engineer, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, fire protection engineer, et cetera. There's a whole list of them within that regulation. We are one of 14 states in the US that license by discipline. There's a significant number of states in the western region of the US that license by discipline. And what I mean by that is, again, like I said, your specific practice area, where the rest of the states license by PE. And because and what they say is those states that license by giving you a PE say you can practice in certain areas as long as you're competent to do so. And what happens is if you get in trouble and they determine you weren't competent to be practicing in a particular area, then you're going to be disciplined. In Nevada, we don't allow that. In Nevada, you are only allowed to practice within the area that you're licensed in. So if you're licensed as a civil, you must practice only within the discipline of civil. If you're licensed as mechanical, you can only practice within the license of mechanical. If you have skills, abilities to do mechanical and electrical, and have sat for both those NCS exams, then you could likely get licensed in both those disciplines in Nevada, but you must be licensed by that discipline to be able to practice in that area. Okay. So the next one I want to talk about then is NRS 625.520. Again, NRS is a statute. And I'm sorry, I got a tickle. So what I want to highlight in this one is that it's unlawful to practice engineering in Nevada unless you're properly licensed. And that not only means ability to practice, it means solicit, offer to practice, advertise, attempt to mislead the public that you are licensed in Nevada and able to offer services. So that's an important one to remember. If you're going to offer and provide services in Nevada, advertise, have it on your website, whatever, you must be licensed in Nevada to do that. And I do want to talk about a particular case we had related to that, an example of a violation. We had a licensee licensed in Nevada who did civil engineering in the structural realm. They let their license expire and continue to practice for 10 years. So for 10 years, they've falsified their stamp, because in Nevada, when you stamp something, you have to put your expiration date of your license on that stamp. You have to handwrite it. And so he fraudulently updated that expiration date for 10 years, so 5 renewal cycles. And his employer finally caught on. Somehow they had caught on and said, you either report yourself to the board or we're going to report you to the board. He reported himself to the board, and he was disciplined for that. He received a hefty administrative fine. All of his designs underwent competency reviews, and he was put on probation. And the reason we did competency reviews on his work is there is a public safety risk. All those drawings, designs that he had completed when his license was expired, obviously he was falsifying that he was doing continuing ed as well. And it becomes a public safety issue because all of those designs are on file with the building department, and they want to be assured that that person is competent and there isn't a public safety issue with those building designs that he did. Okay, in this same statute, NRS 625.520, this is sections 2 through 5. We also talk about the board may be able to issue a cease and desist order to any firm who's not licensed to practice. So if we get somebody that calls our office and, hey, this person on their website, says they're doing engineering in Nevada, blah, 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 and we know they don't have a licensed engineer, we'll do a little bit of research. And if we confirm that that firm doesn't, we'll send out a letter, cease and desist. We also have the ability to go to district court and get an injunction or a restraining order against that firm or that individual that is offering to do services in our state without being properly licensed. And I do want to say a lot of these statutes, I'm talking about engineers, but there's other statutes that say the same thing for land surveyors. So you land surveyors out there, you're not exempt from this. The same thing applies to you. So like I said, even though I'm referring to engineering, it also applies to land surveyors. There's other statutes that are specific to land surveying that say the exact same thing. So an example of a case I want to give you for that is there was an Arizona engineer that was retained to do a number of projects in Nevada. And that engineer was licensed in Arizona, but he was not licensed in Nevada. He had applied for licensure in Nevada, but had never completed the licensing process. He failed to complete the last two steps, which was doing the 24 questions and paying his license fee. So he was approved to be licensed, but failed to complete the process. Well, there happened to be a contractual dispute on the project, and the client became aware that this engineer was not licensed in Nevada and filed a complaint with the board. As it turns out, he wasn't, and he was sanctioned. It doesn't mean he wasn't competent to do the work. It just means he wasn't licensed, so he should not have been offering and providing those services to that client in Nevada because he wasn't licensed. Okay, so next one I want to talk about is NRS 62565. It's related to fraudulent use of a stamp, a professional engineer, professional land surveyor stamp or signature. So it relates to licensees releasing work where they were not responsible charge, not reviewing or verifying as correct the work product before sealing and signing the document, and also contract stamping. Sometimes we have, a drafter does something and they want an engineer to stamp it. The engineer isn't in responsible charge. They just apply their stamp. We call that contract stamping or rubber stamping something. That's not allowed either. You don't have responsible charge of that. And the example I will give you of that, of a violation related to this was, we had an engineer that copied and pasted the stamp of a land surveyor onto a plan sheet. And that's pretty easy these days with Adobe and some of these other software. You can actually pick off somebody's stamp and signature and apply it to another document. And that's what happened in this instance. And then we also had that same engineer that had submitted drawings, plan sheets to an agency and forged the entity's staff member's signature. And the way that the agency caught it was that person had retired. That person no longer worked for the agency. And then once they looked at it, it was obvious the signature didn't match either. So it was forged. Interestingly enough, the engineer claimed his plans runner had committed the fraud, but yet his plans runner was no longer in the country, had no information, wasn't on the payroll. I mean, we couldn't even prove this person existed. So it was fraud. And I do want to point out, a person who violates any of the provisions of this section is guilty of a gross misdemeanor. So not just a violation of administrative law, they're guilty of a gross misdemeanor. Okay, NAC 625610 is related to responsible charge. Now, this is a regulation. And it means that you cannot stamp engineering or land surveying documents without being in responsible charge of the work. So similar to the one before, but this is a regulation and truly is related to being in responsible charge of the work that you're stamping and signing. And I've got two examples for this one I want to share with you. One was an electrical engineer that was provided by the client, by the school district, a set of electrical drawings for a school that was being reconditioned, refurbished, etc. And the the school district provided it to electrical engineer because, you know, one, as a client, you want to standardize the electrical systems, the internet systems, wiring, et cetera, that's, you know, you're putting into your schools because it's easier to maintain in the future. And plus it was a good sample of work of what the district's expectations were for this new designer. Well, this new engineer gave these documents to his drafter, or maybe even a junior engineer, we're not sure, but he blamed his drafter. He gave it to his drafter, and the drafter just copied and pasted it into the documents. And the engineer applied his stamp, his seal, and his signature to that document. It was obvious he didn't review it because the school name wasn't correct. It was the other electrical engineers school that they had worked on, which was a school retrofit. This new school was a new design. It referenced pages that didn't exist or details that didn't exist. It was obvious that this engineer was not in responsible charge. And so that engineer was disciplined for that work. Okay, the second example I would like to share with you is a land surveyor. A land surveyor had a technician go out in the field and collect some field data, which was going to be used to create a boundary survey and a topo map. As it turns out, the final document, based on this survey data that was collected, was off in feet horizontally, inches vertically. The PLS, the land surveyor, obviously did not check any of the field tech's work to confirm that it was accurate or that it was correct or valid. And the mistake wasn't caught until the project was under construction, when another firm was brought in to do the construction staking. And you can imagine the cost to that project having to do a redesign at that point because the survey was so far off. And again, that land surveyor was disciplined for his actions in that. So the next regulation I want to talk about is NAC 625260, and that's being a PE versus an NSE. And civils can do structural work under their license, but in Nevada, they're limited in what they can do. If you're a civil that does structural, you're limited to buildings less than 45 feet in height. And also civils cannot do risk category 4 as described in the International Building Code. And if you're doing buildings greater than 45 feet or risk category 4 type buildings, then you must have a structural engineering license in Nevada. Nevada board considers these type of structures or structural engineering license to be a mastery skill. And so we require that you take the NCS 16-hour structural engineering exam, which is 8 hours of vertical and 8 hours of lateral. And so if you're coming from elsewhere in the US, you need to be aware of that as a civil, you're limited in what you can do for structures. And we do that in Nevada because Nevada is like in the top 3 or top 5 states for seismic activity. So we are concerned about seismic related to earthquakes here in the state. Did you have a comment, Derek?
Just, there's a couple questions up there, asking about the 45 feet. Is it a building over 45 feet or any structure over 45 feet?
It's a building. And if you look at the regulation, there's some exceptions, like bridges over 45 feet. You don't have to have a structural engineering license. Obviously, it's beneficial. It's helpful to you to market yourself. A number of the agencies prefer that. It's not required by statute or by regulation. Specialty structures like sign structures and power poles, over 100 feet, generally we do require an SE. There have been a few instances where we've seen civils that that's all they've done for a power company is power poles over 100 feet. And obviously, if that's all you've done your career, we will allow you to do that as a civil because you're competent. But in general, it's preferable if you have 100 feet. But the hard and fast rule is buildings over 45 feet and risk category 4 structures, buildings. Is that it, Derek?
Yeah, it is. And just let me make one comment. I see
Oh, temporary structures.
yeah, questions starting to trickle in. Just so we can get through the presentation, or at least Patty's portion of it. Hold all of these questions. If we don't answer them as we go along, hold them. If we don't get to them at the end, I'm going to give you instructions. I'm going to give you my email so you can send them to me, and I'll get those questions answered if we don't get to them. So
Yeah, I will take this one last one. Temporary structures, no, a civil can do those, like scaffolding or false work for a structure. Grandstands and tents, I don't know, I'd have to give some thought to that, but let's move on right now. Like Derek said, if we don't get back to them, we will follow up with you. We'll get your information and we can send you an email with an answer.
Yep.
Okay, NAC 625545, written contract. Now, this is an important one. It is surprising to me how many people don't realize this regulation has been in place for almost 15 years now. And it is important to know that you need a written contract before performing any work. You must have a written contract. And it should include a scope of work, the cost for completion of the work, and the anticipated date for completion of the project. We've recently added in the last 4 or 5 years or so that you must also disclose whether you have or whether you maintain a policy of professional liability insurance. We don't say you must have professional liability insurance, just disclose it, because your client needs to be able to make an informed decision if they want to retain you if you don't have professional liability insurance, because they're taking on a risk. Okay. And I do want to say too, it's important, you got to remember, you're often working with an unsophisticated client. And it's important to say simply and clearly what it is you're going to do for them, how much it's going to cost them, and when they can expect to get their deliverables. And you'd be surprised, nearly every complaint that we see in the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of it is the complaint is because the client didn't understand and there wasn't a good contract written, or there probably wasn't even a contract written. So this would save you a lot of grief with your clients, because then they have a good understanding and they can manage their expectations, and it could save you some grief down the road. Okay, so that's really important one to remember. Okay, NAC 625530, relations with employers and clients. And to some extent, this also relates back to clients, or to contracts, I mean. When there's no contract and the client doesn't understand the what, the when, the how much of it, it affects your relations with your client. Okay. And when there's a contract, but the terms aren't adhered to, and the licensee doesn't do what was agreed to in the contract, that can be an issue because it affects your relations with your clients. And you're the professional. Your client is the layperson. They're relying on you for your expertise to help them deliver the project that they want to have delivered. Okay. So licensees are generally not disciplined for not having a contract on their own, but most disciplinary action that happens around a professional being a faithful agent is because they didn't have a contract and there was a misunderstanding. And coupled with that is poor communications. For some reason, some professionals think if they delay getting back to their client, that maybe the issue will just resolve itself. Well, that becomes problematic in that you're non-responsive to your client. Your client just wants an answer. And sometimes you should be able to just say, I don't have an answer right now, but let me get back to you in a week or 2 weeks or whatever. It's important to communicate with your client, keep the communication lines up, not avoid the confrontation or the discussion that you're having. An example of a case I'd like to share with you is of an engineer that was disciplined for violating this regulation. Was the engineer was retained to design a car wash. The engineer was paid by the client, but never delivered the engineered drawings and failed to maintain communications with the client. So the client didn't know what was going on. And at some point too, the engineer said, oh yeah, it's been delivered to the county for, permitting and it's in their court. Well, it turns out the engineer didn't submit them to the county. County had no record of them. The design was never done. So that engineer was disciplined. They had to pay an administrative fine, investigative costs. They were placed on probation and required to refund the client. And, I just want to point out that when we discipline a professional for a violation of our statutes or regulations, not only is that discipline unpleasant because it's going to cost you, and it's going to take your time because you have to respond to us and provide information, but there's probably a monetary impact. And it goes on your permanent record. We report that to the national database. So anytime you apply for a license in another state, that's going to show up. So I would encourage you to do what you can to stay out of trouble, which is part of why we're having this training here too, so that you understand where to go find the statutes and regulations, look at them periodically, which is why we have this 1 hour Nevada law requirement. Look at them periodically so you know the things that you're going to be regulated by so that you can work to stay in compliance. And really, they're not that onerous. So here's the next statute I'd like to talk about. It's NRS 65335, entry upon land or water to perform duties. And this particularly relates to land surveyors. And the reason I put this in here is it's been surprising over the last 2 years, we've seen 4 related violations to this. And it's important that surveyors know that you must notify a property owner before you do any survey work on their land or what appears to be their land. And an instance I can think of here is just because you don't step foot on their land doesn't mean you're not violating this. If you reach your hand through the fence and put a monument in the ground, you are violating this statute if you didn't provide notice to that property owner. And the property owner can't unreasonably deny you access to the property. They could say, well, it's calving season right now. Can you just wait till this week is over and then come back and do it? We've even had surveyors that have had to bring the sheriff with them. They were worried about that property owner coming out with a gun and running them off or whatever, saying they're trespassing. Well, they can't not allow you to do your survey work on their property. They have to be reasonable about it. So what I'm saying is, even if you're not going to step foot on their property, you're going to reach through their fence to do something, to put a lath in or a monument of some kind, you are required by statute to notify that property owner. Okay. So the next one we'll talk about is NAC 625-550. That's related to agency submittals. And that was updated in the last couple of years. Before it was like the 3 strikes you're out rule, which means if you submitted drawings, design, plan sheets to an agency or a document to an agency 3 times and it still wasn't right, the agency was required to notify the board, and you could be subject to not being a faithful agent or maybe incompetency. We recently changed that and it now says that if you've submitted more than one set of plans to the government entity that causes concern regarding the lack of competency of the licensee submitting the plans, or you failed to be responsive to that agency, then they need to report you to the board, and then the board will investigate. And what I do want to say about this is we had a complaint in the last couple years from an agency about it, and they finally got fed up with an engineer who kept submitting incomplete documents to the agency. The engineer didn't thoroughly review the submittals, so the submittals were incomplete or even at times inaccurate. It was like he copied and pasted from prior project, or maybe one of his underlings had did that, but he signed and stamped it and he submitted it. It took a lot of time with the agency to do these repetitive reviews and come back with these same comments over and over and over. And they had documented over a year's worth, probably a dozen examples of where this engineer had done it. And the engineer bullied that agency staff, called up and said, I need my permit. Where's my permit? But yet this engineer was doing substandard work and submitting it to the agency. So essentially just design by review. And the agency said they'd had enough, filed a complaint with us. The engineer acknowledged the screw up, said he'd do things different, had a couple peer reviewers at it, offered to have a couple peer reviewers at his office look over his stuff. So really it comes down to, was it a competence issue or sloppy work, or maybe a combination of both? So it's important upon engineers to do their work, to review it, make sure it's accurate and correct before they even do their first submittal, so that they can avoid that happening. And along those lines, I want to talk just briefly about a document that the board helped put together. It's called the Quality of Plan Submittal Best Practices Guide. That submittal is available, or that best practice guide is available on our website. You can go find it there. And this issue was brought to the board via our professional association liaison committee by the city of Henderson. And City of Henderson wasn't the agency I was talking about before. The other agency I mentioned on the previous slide was a state agency, but the city of Henderson has been experiencing for a while issues with plan submittals and design by review. And the board decided, let's see what we can do to facilitate a discussion around this with agencies, both north and south, as well as practicing professionals, because agencies have issues too. Agencies can have a repetitive review process, may not do a thorough review, and the review comments may not be complete during the first submittal. They may come up with something different during the second submittal. So both sides of the fence had issues, challenges around quality of plans submittal and things that they both could do to improve and help the process. And out of that came this Quality of Plan Submittal Best Practice Guide. So there's things in that guide appropriate for agencies as well as professionals. And it would be, behoove you to read through that, see what you can do better at your firm. If you're an agency, see what you can do better to help with the process within your own agencies. A lot of time and effort went into that. And that was a diverse group, like I said, from Southern and Northern Nevada, of agencies and professionals. And it's a good resource guide. Next, I want to talk about NAC 625-610. And that is related to digital signatures. And I guess what I want to say about that, this regulation talks about signing, stamping and signing documents, as well as digital signatures. And what it comes down to is, if you're going to submit design plan submittals to an agency, or any engineering or land surveying document to an agency in paper, You must wet stamp and ink sign every page of that document that gets submitted in paper. Okay. And if you're going to submit a document to an agency in an electronic format, that means it's never been in paper. That means you created it in AutoCAD, you saved it as a PDF, so it's in an electronic format, and you email it to them or upload it to a portal that they use for the submittal review process. That document must be digitally signed on the front page. And that digital signature is not an image of your signature. That's just an image. A digital signature includes metadata. So when somebody runs their mouse over that digital signature, they can see the metadata. So you can put the image of your stamp and the image of your signature on every page. That's what the agencies want, which includes also your expiration date of your license and the date that you signed or stamped and stamped that document. But the cover page must be digitally signed. Okay, must have a digital signature. And I do want to mention also on our website is that we do have an electronic submittal digital signature guide. And so please go take a look at that. That provides a little more detail around that, and hopefully you can better understand what the requirements are. And I do want to be clear too, an agency like City of Henderson has gone totally electronic. They no longer accept paper for plan submittals. And so anything you submit to the City of Henderson, you must have a digital signature on the front page. And there are ways to do it when you have multiple disciplines. There are ways to do it without invalidating the signature. And it's a fairly new thing, so we get a number of calls here at the board office about how to do it. And what we first do is refer people to this digital signature guide. Then if you still have questions, you can call us. Okay, so with that, I guess I'd like to take some time and answer any questions you all might have. And I think, Derek, you're going to scroll through the chat and see.
The next slide, I think I've got some instructions on that.
Okay, and one thing I want to point out is please follow us on social media. I think you do a search for nvbpels.org. NV is in Nevada, B is in boy, P is in Paul, E is in Edward, LS. That's Nevada Board of Professional Engineers, Land Surveyors, nvbpls.org. And you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So please follow us. And we do post some good stuff. Sometimes information around national exams, or things going on at the boards, newsletters, etc. So please follow us on social media.
Yes, and so this is I mentioned earlier, if you have questions, and I see a few of them trickling in, and I apologize if I didn't see them. I was trying to admit people at the same time as reading the questions, but I'll get a transcript of the questions on the chat channel as they come in. And I'll do my best to read those. But what I would tell you to do, my email's up there. My name's Derek. My email's on the screen right now. Send me an email with those questions, because honestly, the chat is scrolling through too quickly for me to read.
But maybe I can get a few.
We can get a few. So for plan submittals, does each plan need to have a digital signature?
For plan submittals, does each plan?
Maybe each type of plan, like electrical, civil, mechanical.
Yes, each discipline would need to have a digital signature. So the electrical sheets on that first sheet would have to be digitally signed by the electrical engineer. The mechanical sheets would have to be digitally signed on that front page of the mechanical portion with the mechanical engineer, and then the civils. And those could be wrapped. Adobe allows you to wrap them as a portfolio, and Bluebeam does this too. So then it goes as one package, but it's a portfolio. Because I know one of the issues is you can't stitch the documents together into a single document, but you can make it into a portfolio, which makes it a single document. So let me go back here through some of these. Okay, so I think I caught that one. So non-compliant exempt reps is good. Thank you, appreciate that. What about PEs who are electrical engineers and do control systems? Since well before the electrical engineers are allowed to do control systems. Control systems engineers can do control systems. And you're absolutely right. Some like fire protection engineering. I know the building departments have got adamant that fire protection, and you have to have a fire protection engineering license to do fire protection and stamp that. And they can absolutely do that. However, there are some portions that a mechanical could do and some portions that electrical could do. So they could do those portions. Control systems a little bit unique because you're right, electricals were doing that before control systems got spun off. So in many cases, electrical can do that. And what we do for those is we always go back to the exam specs to make sure that what you're doing is in the exam specs to make sure you're appropriately licensed for what you're doing. Okay. Can you do a training webinar on YouTube for electronic signature? Yes. Well, yes, we're thinking about, so the question is, can you do a training webinar or YouTube tutorial for electronic signatures, digital signatures guide? Please cover using Adobe Acrobat and Blue Dream. And we've talked about that and we're considering that. You know, I have to tell you a little funny story because when we were first getting going with this, I wanted to figure out how to do a digital signature myself. And so I Googled, how do you do a digital signature? And I couldn't find anything. And then I started playing around with Adobe and then I realized it was so simple. It's like, oh, well, duh. I mean, that's why I can't find anything out there Googling because it's so simple. It's intuitive. So I understand your frustration with some of this and it's going to take a while for everybody to get up to speed and figure out how to do it right. But yes, we would like to absolutely do a YouTube or a webinar on that. And we'll work to do that next year sometime because I think that'd be helpful for agencies as well as professionals because there's little glitches on the agency side too. So.
Yeah. And the other thing too, just because I answer this question a lot when people call, contact the agency that you're submitting to because each agency will be slightly different in terms of their requirements and how they handle it. Patty has referenced City of Henderson a couple times. They're going to be different than Washoe County and some of the others. So contact the agency. That's always the best place to start and just ask them what they require. There's another question up here related to digital signatures. Will agencies accept other software, PDF software? And again, that's where I would ask the agencies what they'll accept. Whether it's Bluebeam, Adobe, or others. We try to be agnostic in the guidelines that we provide, software agnostic that is, but always a good place to start is with the agencies. Yeah, and back to that, I think it is problematic when the software the person using is asking you to, you know, accept their certificate or enter a password so that you can open that document. What we find is those are coming from these free versions. And what I want to say to those professionals using free versions, come on. I mean, everybody uses Adobe these days, or you're using Bluebeam. Look at the money that you're saving by not having to print those pages, those copies, and stamp and sign everyone. I mean, Adobe is a monthly subscription. Bluebeam is too. You're saving money by not having to print all these pages and FedEx them around or pay somebody to drive them around. Please just, you know, step up, buy Adobe, Bluebeam. Don't make it hard for these agencies. And, you know, at one point we went from Mylar to now doing everything and hand drawing to doing AutoCAD. Your agencies are requiring you to do stuff in AutoCAD or Inroads. It's like, okay, can't you get with the program to properly digitally sign or have the right software to do these electronic submittals, digital signatures? So. Adam Love has a question for delegated submittals that do not get submitted to review agency. Do these need to be digitally sealed? Any document that you provide to a public agency by statute and regulation, I think it's in the regulation, states it must be stamped and signed by the professional. Yeah.
So yeah, if you're submitting it electronically, then yes, it should be digitally signed.
Licensed fire protection engineers are few and far in between. Is it acceptable for a licensed mechanical engineer who is also competent in fire protection to stamp and sign fire protection drawings?
I would say for the most part, yes, but what I'm telling you is an agency may not accept that and say, absolutely not. We want an FPE, and that is within their right.
Mhm.
So they can be more restrictive than what's in the statutes, or more restricted than what we require. They just can't violate. So if an agency says, nope, I want an FPE, you got to get one. And actually we have quite a few in Nevada. I don't remember what the numbers, but we license a couple every week. So that the numbers are considerably more than what they used to be.
I disagree with another professional regarding a boundary resolution. Will a phone call be sufficient to comply with NEC 625.680?
It's incumbent upon a surveyor or to work with another surveyor to figure out a boundary issue. Surveyors cannot leave a messy boundary history. You cannot go, it's a violation if you go file a map that contradicts another map because you're talking about people's property without working to resolve that with a land surveyor. And if you have a specific issue, maybe call the board office, maybe we can help you with that. But it's incumbent upon those land surveyors to work it out and figure out a resolution.
Yep. Another question. If you are a competent engineer for transmission lines for power delivery with a long history of designing transmission structure in excess of 100 feet, does NEC 625 I can't see what that is.
You know, the person asking that question related to the 100-foot power lines is probably the person we licensed approved to do that. And we always go back to their, if it ever became an issue, we would go back to their NCS record, their application with us to see what they described for their work. I do remember there was a civil engineer that we did license by committee or endorsement who had a long history of doing power transmission lines over 100 feet. Clearly that professional was competent to do that and he was licensed for that. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yep.
Okay.
I think we've gotten to the end of the questions here. Could you advance the slide,
Yep.
Patty, the next one? This is going to answer the next question that you have. Okay. How do you document credit or participation in this webinar? So I do the spiel every time, and every time I get a whole bunch of questions afterwards. So I'm going to try it again. Here's how PDHs work in Nevada. It's sort of the honor system. We trust that you're a professional. You have gone through lots of years of training and schooling. We trust that you're going to be ethical and honest in how you, what you take credit for. What all we require for licensure or license renewal is that you report that you have attended the PDH requirement here for this webinar or for this PDH requirement. That's it. However, if you would like a certificate of completion, it's on the screen right now. Screen grab this. If you don't know how to screen capture this,
Control print screen if you've got a
right, control print screen, or if you're on a Mac, there's probably a handful of you that are on Macs maybe. It's Command Shift 3, I believe, or Command Shift 4. Anyway, take a screen grab of this. That's the easiest way to do it. Save that file, however you document. There it is, Command Shift 4. Thank you. However you document your PDH activities, sometimes,
people keep a log.
People keep an electronic
You keep the
log.
certificate.
Yeah, right.
The only reason we would ask for a certificate is if you happen to get audited, you'd have to produce it, but
Yep.
yeah.
And so Patty's right. And that's really the only circumstance where we would actually ask to see proof that you completed this requirement. But ultimately it's up to you. However you keep track of it is completely up to you. If you can't get a screen grab of this, email me. My email was on, hopefully you had a chance to to get that on the previous screen. If you didn't, my email is on our website under the contact information. Just email me and say, hey, I attended the webinar. I noticed that, well, anyway, email me and I'll send you a copy of it. The other thing that I'll tell you, just in conclusion, as we wrap this up, is that these webinars, and when I say these, I'm talking about this one today and then the one tomorrow on professional ethics, which is also a requirement, and you can see it in the fine print there. But these are available as videos on our website under the continuing education page. And there's a screen that what's on screen right there shows you where it lives on our site. You can watch the videos at any point. I noticed there was a handful of people that trickled in about halfway through. You can watch the first part of it to get to see what you missed. Those videos are YouTube videos, and I'll have this one, the most recent one, available hopefully tomorrow. By tomorrow, I'll get that saved up there, and same thing with the professional ethics. Let's say Friday by the latest, I'll get those put up there. So that is all the instructions I needed to give you.
Yeah, let me go back so I can see the certificate. So,
yeah.
So thank you everybody for joining us. We appreciate it. Like I said, I hope you got something out of it. At least learned something you might not have known before you joined us. So thank you for your time today.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I'm gonna shut it down now.
Why don't you stop recording first?
Yeah, I'm gonna shut it down. If you, again, email me if you have questions, and we'll take it from there. Thanks and have a good day.
Actually, maybe we need to hit stop. No, right there.